The title of my talk is Building India Where Dreams Come True. So I'd like to reiterate the dreams of our youth. Everybody understands that in today's competitive world, the people are willing to cross ethical boundaries in real life. But I would say if you look at the basic dreams, degree and a good job, good career path, becoming successful, and leading a happy life. They are oxymorons. Have you ever come across a person who by design wishes to lead an unhappy life? I haven't. I would also like to suggest that when we older people were young, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, did we have different dreams? I would submit that young of any generation who are capable, who are enthusiastic, who are ambitious, would have similar dreams. The only thing that has happened is that the dreams have got accentuated because the nation has not been able to build the number and possibilities of the opportunities that a nation on the move requires. To fulfill these dreams, we must fundamentally accept that our India must be a prosperous nation because there is no merit in poverty. It must have life of love and harmony. That means law and justice must prevail, and the nation must offer opportunities. Thankfully, these are being created by a nation on the move. It must additionally guarantee mentorship because that is what will build the future. All other things are probably towards building the present. We have a great past, grand legacy. One unfortunate consequence of this grand legacy is that I find many Indians who are perpetually absorbed only in the past. They'll keep saying how we are great, etc., etc. Arey Baba, if you are great, then why are we all in this deep problem today? So there is something somewhere, somebody must have been wrong. The future clearly has greater challenges, but the present holds some significant achievements, at least on the economic front, at least on the development front. According to me, how have we succeeded? I would say it's a people's game. People build a nation, and the nation goes as far as the people go. So if it is a people's game, how exactly the people's activities are encouraged or discouraged? In my opinion, it depends on the ethos prevailing in any society. If that ethos is largely governed by what I call vijigisha and what I call character, the nation cannot be stopped. If the ethos is largely filled with sleaze, with shortcuts, then you have a serious problem. Apparently, that is what we see today. How do we build a correct ethos is the question. It is in this context that I would like to briefly share my thoughts on why mentoring is crucial. The role of a teacher. This is a question that I always ask. Who teaches birds to build a nest? Nobody. Apart from the hypothetical Jonathan Livingstone Seagull, if you have read that Bach's book, the other species do not have teachers. Humans realize that their knowledge generating capacity and therefore the spread of knowledge is going to grow so fast that they cannot depend upon genetic transmission. If that were possible, my grandson would be an excellent Java programmer at the age of 5 years. It has not yet happened, maybe 1,000 years later it may happen. So humans created an institution called a teacher. No other species have this. To support this institution of a teacher, we created several support structures. These traditionally were temples, mosques. Today, they are colleges and universities. There is, however, a sad fact that I must observe here. These structures, which were essentially support structures to support an institution of a teacher, today have become institutions. And the teacher today is a paid employee of these institutions. Is no more an institution. I would submit that that has done the greatest harm to the ethos of the teaching community. If I am a paid servant of an organization my behavior will always be significantly different than my behavior when I am charged with the responsibility of being an institution. I will work, of course, but I will work for the salary that I am paid. The less I am paid, I will work less. And lesser I am paid, I will strive to find out alternative means to make up for that money, because I am working for the salary. I am a paid employee. Teaching cannot just be a profession. It has to be a dharma. It has to be a religion. Now this ought to be emphasized to all the teachers. Doesn't matter whether they are teaching for a short time, teaching for a long time. The institutions, the so-called institutions ought to do this, but I find that our universities and colleges are singularly failing in this, becoming increasingly administrative mechanisms to control rather than facilitate. Instead of encouraging independent thinking, they are browbeaten by syllabi written down 20 years ago, by examination systems which are stale. All of this need to undergo a change. A teacher is always needed. It may come in different forms. A formal teacher is the humanity's greatest creation, but informally, parents are teachers, elders are teachers. Subsequently, when the young grow up and join jobs, their senior colleagues are teachers. And at the end, one is a teacher to oneself. This process cannot end, this process must continue, and this process must be emphasized to everyone, both the teachers and the taught. Mentoring, therefore, is fundamental requirement. I would submit that it is as important as creating skillful, knowledgeable young people to build tomorrow's nation. Whom will we get? The youth of today, as I described. Their state is, they are better informed, they are highly ambitious, and they are intensely competitive. So what comes in their way of achieving a grand nation? There are several things, several have been spoken here, several others you would know. I submit that in my opinion the biggest challenge is their attitude. And this attitude, which ordinarily would have been a well-rounded attitude, having all the good characteristics that would have been built through the mentoring by the parents, teachers, institutions, automatically, because of the intense competition, the attitude is being built only by the rat race for marks, as you mentioned. Every rat race produces a few winners, but it creates many losers. The winners acquire overconfidence, bordering on arrogance. I see them every year when they join first year, first semester after cracking JEE. We have to spend a full semester of bashing their heads to bring them down to the earth, saying that, look, you may be great, but everybody around you here is as great. So your intelligence is nothing that you have done anything to earn for. It's a heritage. How you use your intelligence and how positively you construct your activities on that intelligence is what counts. It takes a lot of time. But that is at least easily feasible. The problem is with the losers who acquire dividends, many of whom start bordering on despondence. That is how you see somebody is committing suicide, somebody is nervous. See, this is what the world has done. She has got 95% marks, he has got 92% marks, they are geniuses. I have got 40% marks, I am an idiot. I did not believe that I am an idiot. But people convinced me consistently, first standard, second standard, fifth standard, 10th standard. By 12th standard, even my father had given up. Cycle ka dukaan chalao. Something like that. 12th standard, 40%, what will you do? My entire life is messed up because of this comparison. Mentoring must lead to a beneficial attitude. That is my humble submission, a fundamental requirement of beneficial attitude. Mentoring future citizens to unleash their true potential is a tough task. In my humble opinion, I have listed a 12-point formula. I will just quickly read out point one by one. This is what we wish to convey to the youngsters for shaping their attitude. First and foremost, of course, acquire knowledge. That's the fundamental objective of a teacher. About all domains. So don't build silos in your mind. Today we see that, we have divided ourselves. Commerce, arts, science, engineering. civil engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, accounting, investment, something. Have you ever seen a real life problem coming to you and saying, I am an electrical engineering problem, please solve me? Or I am an accounting problem, you solve me? The real world problems come and say, I am a problem, solve me. Are we preparing people to solve problems? Unfortunately, by creating silos, we are hindering their ability to innovatively solve problems. So this is the first thing that you have to communicate. Of course, specialize in your domain. See, the fundamental reason why we divided the knowledge into domains is because the growing body of knowledge in everywhere. You cannot, today's knowledge cannot be taught or assimilated by any single human being. That is why you do this. But it does not mean that everyone should not be aware, at least to the minimal requirement of everything around them. Master the skills. So methods and techniques. Okay. There are people who will not adapt to simple methods and techniques. Articulation, the greatest weakness of the Indians. Today's English paper you see, or a letter that you see, or an email that you see, how are you is spelled as HOWRU. It's called an SMS email. Now, if these kids grow up and say pass a management course and get a good job, and they write a mail like that to a global vice president, why? That company will lose that job. These fundamental requirements of succinct articulation, both verbal and written, is a requirement. We have to tell them to be meticulous. There is absolutely no place for sloppiness. Be the god of little things. Okay. Devil is in the details. You have to tell them to work hard. In IIT, we try to tell them that, look, people much cleverer than you have not yet found any alternative. If at the age of 63 I have to work 20 hours a day, you better work at least 18 hours a day. Agreed that you are smarter than me, you are younger, but you cannot work for 6 hours a day and hope to achieve anything in life. This is how you will solve problems. This is how you will solve problems innovatively. I am now slowly moving towards points which gradually shift their emphasis from concrete things about the skills, domain knowledge, etc., to important human things. Learning to commit. Don't sit on the fence. Tell them that you have to make your choice. And once you make a commitment, no matter if the sky falls on your head, you have to live with that commitment. So learn to honor commitments. It has to be taught. Respect deadlines. Because the modern world, complex activities depend upon everybody doing the job exactly on time. Someone goofs up, the whole activity is messed up. Failing, face failures squarely. Failures will happen. And the hurt is inescapable in any failure. But the frustration is curable. And unless one is taught and one learns to cure the frustration, what would happen is one will go deeper and deeper and deeper into the morass. Are kya ho gaya, mera zindagi kharab ho gaya. And he will actually make his zindagi kharab by not doing anything positive. So, today youngster, I find they are afraid of failures. The same reason. I mean, if I got 40% all my life and everybody is dubbing me useless, I don't want to score 40%. Maybe I will look at her and say, I will not match her 92%, but maybe I must get at least 60%, first class. Wo bhi nahi mila, morass. I will treat it as failure. I must come out of these failures. I must face failure square. Recover speedily is a message that we ought to give without absolutely any doubt. To be a trusted friend, the definition of friendship is very funny. You be a goody-goody to a person, and that is called friendship. That is the biggest nonsense. A trusted friend is one who will tell you what you are doing wrong. Your enemy will not tell you that. Only your trusted friend can tell you that this is wrong. I come back to the point that he made about the reprimand at the right point. When a teacher does that, teacher is not shouting at the student. Teacher is being the most trusted friend of the student. Telling that student, look, this is not correct, that is not correct. Of course, a trusted friend must stand by you in times of difficulty. So there are both sides to it. Try to be a good leader. A good leader, there are many characteristics of good leaders. But the fundamental characteristic of good leader is that if in a joint activity, if there are mistakes, the leader takes ownership. And if there are achievements, the leader gives credit to the team. Today's many leaders you see doing exactly ulta. That is not leadership. Teach them to enjoy giving. And I don't mean only giving money. They should learn to give time. They should learn to give advice. They should learn to give their concern. Do not forget, when you give your time, 15 minutes time to someone, that 15 minutes will never return back to you. Any money that you give, it will always come back. It can come back. Money, time is a one-way traverse. In several senses, giving your time is far more valuable than giving your money. Teach them that value. Emulate what is good. Common sense thing, but generally we tend to look for great souls for deciding or understanding what is good. Of course, those are great role models. Starting with Swamiji, you take Mahatma Gandhi, Anna Hazare today. But is it true that we must always look at the great models? I humbly submit that it is not true. For this, I have an hypothesis. I was told that hypotheses are important, but then there are two more things that were mentioned. The hypothesis must be followed with sound logic and a lot of experimentation. The reason this hypothesis has not become a theorem yet is, I think, inadequate experimentation. But I will share the hypothesis with you. Randomly sample 10 people. To students, I say sample 10 of your students. To teachers, I say sample any 10 teachers around. To professionals in banking, I say take any 10 professionals from your order. Make 2 lists. In one list, you write down all the great and useful and followable characteristics that each of those persons display. Take a union of good characteristics. Somebody is meticulous, somebody is very concerned with others, somebody is ambitious, somebody is very harsh. Divide these characteristics into good and bad. Here is my submission. The first list will represent all that you must adopt as desirable, a perfect person. The second list will represent a perfect idiot from which we must learn what not to do. I am humbly suggesting that there is always a lot of good in each one of us and there is always some bad in each one of us. When we look at others, we do exactly opposite. When something is bad in someone and that something is good in me, I'll compare and convince myself, I am better, that fellow is useless. If something is good in someone and something bad in me, I'll not look at that particular thing at all. I must do exactly the opposite in order to benefit. So here is the point, what to learn from whom is up to you. And this is a message that teachers must give. The 12th point I have set as 0th point because this is perhaps the most important point. And this says, reset your attitude. The attitude of rat race, the attitude created by rat race is not useful. I often tell them each rat race has same effect, whether it is for marks, whether it is for wealth, whether it is for recognition. Each rat race will produce some winner rats and many loser rats, but only rats. It cannot produce human beings. And we have to remind these youngsters, you are a human being, the greatest creation of God. You can make your life phenomenally great, much happier, not only to yourself but to everybody else. But please, for God's sake, don't go down to a level of remaining a rat all your life. Get out of this. Comparison with others will eventually stink. And this is what we need to remind them. The right comparison is to be made with oneself. The right question to be asked after any task that I do, the right question I should ask to myself, could I have done it better? Sadly, people have stopped asking this question. Everybody does something. But at the end of something, I am always happy to note that I have done this something better than him or her. Or I feel sad if I have done this worse than him or her. I never ask this question, could I have done it better? This question has only one answer. Yes. If I do sufficient introspection, I will always find some small thing which I could have done better, or maybe a major approach which I could have changed. Imagine the immense learning there. And that happens because I don't compare myself with anyone. I have an example of learning a foreign language. You would have seen people spending time in attending classes. I have seen people learning German through a preliminary course in German, 1 year duration, a lot of books, exams, certificates. Second, 1 year more course in advanced German. I have seen some of the advanced German pass-outs spending 6 months in Max Muller Bhavan in Pune to practice German. And at the end of all of this, they are able to speak a little German, understand most of the spoken German, and can translate German literature into English with the help of a dictionary. We think they are all great because they have solved an intellectually vastly challenging problem. However, we forget that every human child learns a foreign language between the age of 3 years and 6 years, which is later on called the mother tongue of the child. No preliminary course, no advanced course, no teachers, no subjects, and most of all, no comparison. She got 95% mark, you got only 40%, idiot, you will never learn. I would like to proudly tell my father when I get 40% marks and he criticizes me, look father, she was speaking her mother tongue exactly as well as I was speaking my mother tongue when both of us were the same age. Now if things are worked out differently, I submit that somebody else is responsible for this mess. And that somebody else is nobody else other than the teacher. Because the teacher has to take prime responsibility, as he says. Of course, the entire society is responsible. To my observation, these are the characteristics that I have discovered in child which we tend to miss. Curiosity, boldness, perseverance, and excitement. The example I always give is, imagine that there is a glass on the table and a child decides to do a naughty thing like throwing that glass down and breaking that glass. First of all, you are convinced that all children are immensely curious. I have not seen a non-curious child yet. They are bold, they are willing to ask any question, any time to satisfy themselves. What happens to them when they grow up? Some teacher like me tells, don't waste the time for this class. Some teacher says, don't ask stupid questions. They curtail my boldness and thereby they curtail my curiosity. Because when I am asking a question to someone, I am actually asking it to myself. And when I stop asking questions, the curiosity goes. Perseverance. If a child decides to do something, have you ever seen a child giving up? Take this example of this glass which he wants to throw, or the bottle which he wants to throw. The child will come, try to climb, it will fall down twice, thrice, it will cry. Fourth time probably the mother will catch the child, make the child stand in a corner for 10 minutes. It will cry for 10 minutes. On 11th minute, it will again look here, there, come back. It will pull a chair from somewhere. 5th time, 10th time, it will ultimately climb up on this table, throw that bottle down, and when it breaks, the child will dance with joy. The point is, when did we grown-ups last dance with joy? I'm not suggesting we climb on tables and break glasses, but I'm humbly suggesting that we have perhaps forgotten the innate gifts of the God given to humanity, which are there with us from birth. Curiosity, boldness, perseverance, and excitement. So, my 0th point says, okay, one more thing. Child has all of this, but the child does not have humility and ethics. These are acquired syndromes. These are syndromes superimposed on humanity by the human culture growth. Good values. Okay. Don't say, I own everything. Share. Respect others. These are cultural values. So my 0th principle says, rediscover the child and build a great human. There is no contradiction in this. Rediscover a child in you and build a great human. I will tell you my observation last 40 years of teaching, right from children to grown-ups. I have seen childlike attitude of curiosity amongst the grown-ups. And I have seen great humility and ethics in 10 years old. What we call sanskar is what needs to be passed on from teachers, from parents, from the society to everybody else. And here I would submit, even if you are not a teacher, you are, let's say, a corporate officer or you are a citizen, it is as much your job to point out ethical flaws in anyone that you see. By keeping quiet, you are not contributing to the mentoring, because mentoring is not something that can be partitioned into a process to be executed only by a few. It is a job of the entire society. Excitement and passion, humility and ethics, vision and values, this is what will make their life as beautiful as dewdrops. I would ask the youngsters this question. These are the dewdrops which look very fine, very beautiful. I have an interpretation of this dew. For me, the D stands for dreaming big, because our dreams limit our achievements. For me, the E stands for enjoying life. You might find it contradictory, but it is not. I must enjoy every moment of life. When I am solving the hardest problem, or when I am seeing a nice movie, or when I am having a debate with my wife, whatever, I must enjoy every moment of life, especially the last one, Pratibha. Each moment is precious because it never comes back. Remember what I said about time, it's one-way traffic. And that is why it is so urgently important to come out of failures. Because the more moments you spend in crying out, you are actually losing those moments and not having them to do something positive in life. W is for working hard, because you cannot create history otherwise. So in short, dream big, enjoy life, and work hard. And I tell people, this is an IIT style examination. Any 2 out of these 3 is not an option. I've seen some people saying enjoy life, and that's it, nothing else. It's not good. The young are the leading age of our demographic advantage. This advantage will not stay with us for more than 20 years. If we fail to do something significant in mentoring these people in the next 20 years, history will remember us as people who did not contribute to nation building. This is my last slide, an unsolicited advice. The first paragraph is not my word, said by Dr. Great Abdul Kalam. Although he has written these words later in many of his books, I'm very proud to say that first time he initiated them many, many years ago when he came to IIT Bombay to receive his honorary doctorate causa. And he said that why we want to become a developed nation is because we want to live an honorable and comfortable life. And more importantly, we want to live in the polity of the world with our heads held high, live as equals. It is in this context that I believe that the teachers have a special role, because the potential can be unleashed only if the teachers enable it. They hold the key. So my request, be the change agent as a great mentor and help build such a nation for all of us. Thank you so much.